as some of our earlier panelists mentioned, having conversations around health with family and peers wasn't such a common thing, and it still isn't. But today we have a panel of students who are not only a part of these conversations, but are starting them as well, which is incredible, and kudos to all of you. So we came up with Wellness on the Yard because when we think about an HBCU campus, the yard is one of the most memorable and defining places of your experience. It is the mecca of HBCU culture. It is where you develop lifelong friendships, celebrate your successes, have some of the deepest and most thought-altering conversations of your life, and evolve into who you truly are. So how do you capture that feeling? That's what we were trying to figure out. How do you make that feeling feel real? And so that's how we came up with Wellness on the Yard. That's what it truly is. So in fact, this panel is an extension of our new all-inclusive online hub for HBCU students and alumni. Wellness on the Yard is this safe place that consists of content created for HBCU students by HBCU students and alumni to educate, inspire, and advise others on how to live a healthy lifestyle and become independently healthy so they can live longer and healthier lives and achieve generational health. So without further ado, this is Wellness on the Yard.
Hi, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Yeah. Such a gentleman. Yeah, give it up for Avery. Such a gentleman. Love it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Jade, for that wonderful introduction. So let's start with introducing our panelists. You can just turn on your mic. So I'll start with you, Avery. Just your name, your school, year of study, and what it is that you're doing.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. So Avery Ford, I am a rising fourth-year medical student at Georgetown. I'm interested in plastics and reconstructive surgery, so I'm applying right now for sub-Is and eventually residency. And I'm also the founder of Black Men in White Coats at Georgetown. We just had a recent chapter for community building and just making sure we have a collective on the campus.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bailey Moore. I'm a junior at the George Washington University, majoring in public health with a minor in human services and social justice on the pre-medical track. I hope to become an OBGYN one day. And I am the co-founder and co-president of the GW Black Girl Pre-Health Collective, which has a goal of creating a space of mentorship, unity, and motivation for the Black girls and pre-health concentrations at GW.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stacy Davis. I am a third-year dental student at Howard University College of Dentistry. I've recently elected to be the president of Student Council and have been blessed to be a Social Mission Alliance Health Fellow, to where we continue to work on health equity, diversifying the workforce, and just overall advocacy.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Rashmi Krishnasamy, and I'm a first-generation South Asian daughter to immigrants. I moved to the DC area in 2019 to finish my master's in public health and community-oriented primary care with a concentration in health policy at the Milken Institute School of Public Health. And now my job is to work in quality improvement at Unity Healthcare, which is our FQHC here in DC. And I actually just got into medical school, so I'll be heading out to... I will be starting at AT Still University out in Arizona this summer. Oh, and I'm also, my alliance here is I'm a co-chair of the Advocacy Advisory Council of the Social Mission Alliance. Happy to be here.
And our Madam Co-Moderator.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Niadi Sayas. I'm a rising second year at Georgetown University School of Medicine, and I'm actually the current president right now of our chapter is SNMA, or Student National Medical Association. I'm so happy to be here today and looking forward to all of the engaging conversation that we'll have.
Thank you so much. So with that being said, let's jump into our questions. So how do you envision health? Avery, kick us off. How do you envision health?
Am I going to be first every time?
No.
Just health in general for me is just the balance of the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, in your day-to-day life. So in a personal side, that's how I would see it. In a healthcare aspect, it would be making sure that there's equitable access when things are wrong, and making sure, honestly, that we can attack as many health disparities as possible, so much that they're not a topic and it's an actual, no longer a concept, but something that exists, that we have equity in general. So that's how I would envision it, and that's the direction I would like to see things go.
All right. Bailey, how about you? How do you envision health?
I see it very similar. I know a lot of the time it could be, just some being in physical health, being healthy, but it also is more than just physical. It's mental, like you said, it's spiritual. It's also having the ability to have access to even have the highest quality of all those things as possible.
Yes, I would agree, but I think for me, when I envision health, I think of it as an aspect of just as simple as someone going to school. It's something in an increase of education that I feel that, especially in my community overall, that lack thereof has caused a lot of disparities within the health disparities as a whole. So I think for me, health is my future and vision of health is something that is just as common as going to school or going to the grocery store. It's just that importance is on that same level as the others.
Okay.
Yeah, and I definitely would agree with what you all have just said. And I think the only thing I would add is just the word wellness. I think health is wellness, not individual, but community wellness. I know Dr. Menzies and Dr. Gigi, you all just kind of covered that in our previous panel. But it means, like Stacey said, being able to go to school, being able to go to a grocery store and not see a wilted piece of lettuce, but to be able to see a full head of lettuce and actually know what it means to eat a good head of lettuce. So I would say, wellness is health.
I love it. I love it. Nia, what do you have for us?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what everyone said so far. I think for me, it really goes down to just dismantling the barriers to healthcare that we see, especially in marginalized communities. Growing up from like Oakland, California, I've just seen that since the beginning, and really that's what impassioned me to like choose a career in healthcare. And so for that, it just means just so that everyone has like a fair chance in getting to the best health that they can. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, and I like the fact that you guys added the spiritual aspect. Sometimes that's left out. So I'll turn it over to you, Nia.
Thank you so much. We can start with Rashmi now on the other end with our next question. So what influenced you to choose a career in health?
That's a great question. So I guess I've kind of always been interested in health. So as I mentioned earlier, my parents are immigrants from South India. My grandparents on one side were teachers. My grandparents on the other side were farmers. That was kind of the descent. But growing up, my family was really good about kind of inculcating values that were centered around wellness. So for me, it was never about I just want to grow up and be a doctor. It was like, how can I continue to uphold wellness? So, Dr. Menzies, I was really excited when he was talking about breathing techniques and yoga. And that was something that was really integrated into my early years. And my parents are both actually engineers by training, but they, really, of course, were very much imparted the values of education and the importance of education into my life. But I really wanted something that integrated that wellness aspect. And so that's kind of where my early interest in health started. But it was funny because I actually started my college career I wanted to go out there and be a neurosurgeon. And I look back at my, 18, 19-year-old self now, and I'm in public health, I'm doing health policy, I want to be a family medicine doc, which is totally in the very opposite spectrum of that. But my interest in public health started when I actually did a couple of years back in my home village, my dad's village. I went back to India, and that was the first time I really saw health disparities and understood what they were. I had heard about the challenges that my parents had growing up in India. My mom grew up kind of in the inner city, if you will, of a city in South India. My dad grew up in a rural part of India. So I learned anecdotally about health disparities from their point of view of, having to go so far away to access healthcare. And I saw that with my own 2 eyes when I went to do my work during college in India. And then I came back to my home community in Pittsburgh where I grew up. And I worked with the American Heart Association. And that's when I started to see those very same disparities I saw in India and through my stories what my parents told me in my own community in Pittsburgh. And a lot of it I realized had to do with how policies were written and how grocery stores were put in certain parts of Pittsburgh and surrounding Pittsburgh, and how certain communities that were right around the campus of Carnegie Mellon and University of Pittsburgh, both institutions where I had gone to school and taken classes, were over-policed, and there was just a very different environment. And I saw very vividly in front of me how that impacted community health. And I was working on a intervention with the AHA to address hypertension in Black communities, and it was there that I realized, the intervention was focused on health education, but I realized it was much bigger than health education. Right. It was about the structural barriers. It was about how resources were allocated. It was about policies and how they were written. So that's really when I kind of made the decision to come to DC and do that more. And then, wanted to be a physician to be able to do it in the clinical setting as well. Right. So long-winded answer for you, but that's all of it.
No, fabulous answer. And it's so crazy because I feel like our stories really parallel each other. With my family's from Eritrea in East Africa. And so they told me their stories about, the healthcare system back home. And that's what really impassioned me to want to become a physician. But I was able to see it myself in my own city of Oakland. So it's really crazy. But yeah, thank you so much for your answer. Mm-hmm. And then next, Stacey.
Yeah, so I would say my journey kind of started in the, I guess you can say, the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri, but we're really technically the city. At a young age, I guess you can say I was very hyper aware of what people who looked like me weren't having access to. And that awareness and having a mother who is an amazing woman and is a nurse, just really exposed me to healthcare. She worked at Children's Hospital for a long time, our local Children's Hospital, the neonatal, in the NICU, and then eventually she worked with first-time moms in the city. And at the age where she did that, she was asking me, what should I get my client? She's your age and her birthday's coming up. And I'm just like imagining someone my age is about to have a child. And I was like 12 at the time. And so those are the experiences and the aspect. And again, working at the county at the time, she exposed me to the importance of giving back, the importance of helping those who may not be educated on different things. I remember one of the first volunteer events I was at was bike safety, and we were giving out helmets to those who, to underserved communities within St. Louis. And so me wanting to be like my mother, I was like, I knew I wanted to be in healthcare, but at a young age, she said, at the time, she's like, nurses don't get paid enough, you need to pick something else. So for some reason, and I feel like it was very divine, I was like, oh, I want to be a dentist. Didn't know why, but I just rolled with it for a long time. And then eventually I realized dentistry really connects my desire to give back to my people, especially because, again, one of the first dentists I ever shadowed, she actually worked in public health at our local center. And she's a Black woman, Afro, just was amazing. I'm just like, wow, I want to be like you. So, and I actually ran into her at a conference last summer, and I haven't seen her since I was like 17, 18. So it was great to tell her I'm me partly because of you. But at the same time, my desire again to give back, which I know that's why I'm really big on education case. A lot of us don't know how to take care of this because we weren't educated to. There's a lot of myths that has circled within our communities, and often things that, our grandparents did and everything just to protect, because that's the only thing that they knew. They didn't have access to a dentist at the time, or didn't trust one that was locally or couldn't go to one. And so that's where I realized that dentistry allowed me to do that. I'm a fan of art. I love working with my hands. And so every day it's like a new project. So I look at my patients like, how can I make you happy today? And then just overall, again, it goes into my desire to join the force in a holistic aspect of taking care of ourselves, so of our bodies and our mind. And a lot of people may or may not know, like, the mouth is the avenue to a healthy body. And so being part of this force of working with my fellow physicians on how to get this person who may look like me or may not look like me back to a happy state, mentally, emotionally, physically, that's just something that over time I fell in love with. And so that's kind of my journey onto where I got to this point. I was blessed at the time. First, I guess we'll talk about that later. But eventually, I did decide to go to Howard University College of Dentistry. I actually went to University of Missouri Columbia undergrad, and first time I applied, again, statistically as minority people, my dental admission test score was not a par of what was wanted. So I took a gap year, worked as a dental assistant, which I had already been doing. And then second time I was accepted into 7 dental schools. And so eventually I did choose Howard. I fell in love with DC. And then just wanted to join just the overall, thank you. Just wanted to join the overall just fight and community of just being comfortable just for at least 4 years to continue to grow and expand as a person. But yeah, so that's kind of my journey as to how I got to this point and ended up here in DC.
Thank you so much. Amazing. And then, yes.
For me, I'm one of the people who decided a lot later that they wanted to go into medicine. I am a graduate of Duke Ellington School of the Arts in DC from the vocal department.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in DC. So was my mom. And my junior year of high school, it's almost time to apply to college. It's like, what am I going to do? Like, I don't know anything about what I want to do. I was thinking of going into music. Maybe I also thought about opening up a yoga studio. My brain was all over the place. But the second semester of my junior year, I was taking anatomy, and my anatomy teacher was a Black woman. She was a former podiatrist, and I was fairly interested in the class because she would also talk about different things in healthcare, and I was like, oh, I never knew that. And then, she saw that I was interested and introduced me to the program at GW. It's called DC HAP, the DC Health and Academic Prep Program. And so I applied and I got in and I was super excited. And that summer, before I started my senior year, is where I learned all about healthcare, all about different aspects of healthcare, health disparities, social determinants of health. We got to talk to nurses, PAs, midwives, physicians, and there were 16 of us and we were put into 4 groups. And my group, the project that we worked on was on maternal mortality in DC among Black women. And I never knew anything about it. I was like shocked. I was like, this is crazy. This is ridiculous. And it kind of was like a switch. That's how I kind of figured like this is definitely the path I'm meant to be on, because it was an immediate click in my mind that this is what I want to do. I became so passionate about it. And that's when I decided I'm going to go to college. I'm going to go to medical school and I want to be an OBGYN. So I applied to medical school, and then I was also doing college, not medical school. I was doing dual enrollment at GW at the time. And then the second semester of my senior year, I took psychosocial aspects of health and illness with my lovely mentor, Dr. Ward here. And that is what solidified that I wanted to major in public health, because I was applying biology at first because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. Like, I'm going to I want to be in medical school. Let's apply biology. I did not even like biology. I just thought that's what I wanted to do. But I realized, like, no, I can do public health. Like, I'm very passionate about public health. And I was blessed to receive the Steve and Joel Trachtenberg Scholarship, which is a full ride to GW for DC high school seniors. And I went into public health, and ever since then, like, it's just been a constant drive. I completed my birth doula training last summer. So I'm very interested in the holistic aspect of being an OBGYN, learning about what Black women go through, their experiences, and how birth has become a lot over medicalized and westernized, and it's unnecessary a lot of the time. So I want to become an OBGYN that listens and creates a space that Black women want for their birth, not just forcing things on them. So that's
go.
We love to see it. We love it.
Yes.
I love that. So my story actually was a little bit more of a fiasco and breakthrough at the same time. I was really young. Basically, I used to have repeated peritonsillar abscesses as a kid, and I was not good with doctors at all. Like, my mom would say doctor, I would cry. She'd say shots, I would cry. I would see Chuck E. Cheese, I would cry. Like, I cried at everything all the time. I was a crybaby. But going to the physician was actually like something that did not suit me well. And so when I would get these recurrent peritonsillar abscesses like every winter, it was that I was also missing out on fun things. Like I missed an Usher concert. I had my shirt ready. I was ready for it to get signed. All my family was going except me. And I was going to Legoland, and that got ruined. And I was just having FOMO as a kid. And I finally, I would have this muffled voice. I couldn't swallow, couldn't eat. I would have fevers, and I was just having a tough time. And I would delay as long as possible, like yanking at my mouth and just pouting in my room and downplaying my symptoms so that I didn't have to go to this doctor at all. And it would just get so bad that, okay, now I can't breathe, so we got to go. And my parents would end up rushing me, and they're like, you do this every time. And I'm like, you know why? But I would finally get there, and I would be treated well every single time. And I guess the second time, after already knowing how much of a hassle I was, this physician really just took great care of me, and she found a way to calm me down. She counted down the seconds for my incision and drainage and like the numbing protocol. Like she kind of gave me like a step-by-step of what to expect. She let my dad hold my hand, and she kind of just made me feel very comfortable. And I thought that was impossible, even at a young age. And I just felt really special and taken care of. And I left better than I went. And I was like, this wasn't horrible. I kind of want to be in her position one day. Like that was really awesome. And then I went back to playing and just doing normal kid stuff. But after that moment, I would always just go around saying, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a doctor. And it was cool. I would get such great feedback. Everyone would be like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, we need you. That would be great. And I didn't really understand what that meant. As I would grow up, I used to say anesthesia because I had just local going to my throat during the procedure. So I was like, I want to be an anesthesiologist, the biggest word I knew. And it was just really cool. But I found out what it meant to matter. People said that, you matter, you can make a difference. And I didn't get that until, I really went to high school, and I went to a summer program at Brown called So You Want to Be a Doctor. And they sent me off. I earned this position, and they sent me off. I was so excited. I was like, this costs a lot, but I want to explore it. Let's see what we can do before I apply to college. And it was fantastic. I had a dorm. They did orientation. They gave us a syllabus for that time frame. And I remember going to, I read in the syllabus, we have gross anatomy. And I was like, I don't know why they put gross in there, but but when I went to anatomy, I was like, yes, this is gross.
Yeah.
Like I don't like this. But it stuck with me, and I was like, this is a fantastic experience. And what else I got there was an understanding about what it meant to be a patient. So I was always inspired to do medicine because I was in that position of feeling better as a troubled kid and as a complicated, just stubborn kid. But in this program, I understood more about what it meant to be a patient, and that if you live, on the other side of the railroad or the train tracks, that's why likely you had a delayed presentation to come to the ER in the first place, or where you live, depending can impact the food desert that you have and the health outcomes that you have, or how much money you make can impact if you actually are compliant with these medications, or if you want to take them, you just can't afford them, and all the other things that go with that, the psychological well-being, the cultural factors that led to this patient being in front of you, even the language, do they understand what you're saying? Are you offering, interpreter services? I practice Spanish because I'm Mexican, but also because I want to have that extra layer of support if need be. And I studied abroad to do that. And I studied kind of just my whole life in high school and college and beyond. But that was another facet of it. It was do you have another language available? Is this, literature in Spanish also? So for me, that early age saying I want to be a doctor because I was this incessant child crying developed into a more meaningful role of what it means to be in medicine, and what it means to be Black in medicine also, being that they need me, because we connect on so many different levels. There are things that you can't learn in a textbook. There are things that you can just resonate by understanding same lived experiences. And that's a really special privilege and sometimes burden to go through this, steps to medicine. So that's how I got, really involved in medicine. And now having almost, I will not say almost finished med school, I'm just a fourth year now. There's still a year left, a strong year left. But I've really come to understand, treating the whole patient, being at Georgetown, that's our motto, and understanding kind of what all the different facets are that leads to why this person is in your care and why they should trust you. Are really matter. And so I want to be that person for a lifelong profession and just purpose.
Yeah, I love that. You guys give them a round of applause
Yeah.
for that. It's great. So I heard a few things that you all mentioned. Some of you participated in various pathway programs. That's huge, especially for folks in the room with these pockets. Our pathway programs, they are very expensive, but they're very much needed in order to diversify our health professions. So school can be difficult. It is. It can be difficult. So tell us about how you actively engage in taking care of your health. I remember when I was an undergrad, we were afraid of the freshman 15. So you gain those extra 15 pounds, but I was a transfer student, so it was a transfer 20. So, talk to us about how you take care of yourself. I'm gonna be controversial. Bailey, start us off.
It's interesting you mentioned the freshman 15 because I started my freshman year virtually, and then GW also just got a dining hall, so we were using Grubhub. So it was more like freshman 30, 35, but it's getting better now. So in terms of my mental health, I think a big thing for me, I have a problem saying no because I want to have everything on my shoulders. I want to help this person. I want to participate in this. I want to help out this organization. I want to, create an organization. So for me, I have issues saying no, but as I've gotten further into college, I've kind of learned that it is okay to say no. You don't have to have everything. You don't have to do everything. Because I just always think in the back of my mind, you have to do twice as much to get, what is the saying? Yeah, twice as much to get half as far. So I always thought, okay, I have to have all this on my resume so that I can, seem impressive by the time it comes to apply to medical school. But I realized that created a lot of burnout for myself. So especially this year, as I'm almost done, almost going to be a senior, which is crazy, I've learned that it's okay to say no sometimes. It's okay to just not even say no to do homework. It's okay to say no just to not do anything at all, because I find myself always doing something, always busy. And I'm like, this is college, but it's also a time for you to have fun. So sometimes it's okay to say yes to hang out with your friends. But the first 2 years of college, I was always the one that never went out with my friends. I was like, I can't go out. And I've realized that's what this time is for, because once I get to medical school, it's going to be a little bit harder to, have the fun that I want to have. So I've learned that saying no is one of the best forms of mental health, at least for me. So.
How about you?
I can go next. I think for me, my mental health to this point has come in waves. I think that when I wanted to backtrack, I got accepted to 5 dental schools, not 7. It was only 7 interviews. But I think in ways, I will always say my biggest blessing was my gap year that I did take. At the time, most students you all may know or may not know, you think a gap year is the end of the world, oh my gosh, I didn't go straight in and things and that. And I was one of those people. But overall, I think that was the best year for me. After I was successful in my dental admissions test, and I knew I had secured a position in some dental school, didn't care where, but somewhere. I took an active approach of going to therapy. I said dental school is going to be treacherous. And it has been. We're almost there. But I was like, there's a lot of things that I may not even know I habitually or mentally may be going through, just because I've always been very, like you said, active, very I don't really say no a lot, still working on that to this day. But just a lot of things to where I was just always like, and I was a big perfectionist at the time. And so I took the active approach of saying, again, COVID. It's COVID. Let me go to therapy. There's a lot of things I want to address that I really do not want to try to deal with in the middle of 28 credit hours. And so in a new city by myself and things of that nature. So therapy was an amazing opportunity for me because the therapists that I did have, they just really started from foundation. How did your mom raise? How did your dad raise? And really just helped me debunk a lot of things overall. And so that was my biggest thing on mental health. And to this day, I still can see a therapist at times too, but I just feel like it's just a fine-tuned thing. Sometimes I just need to check out and things of that nature. I will also ditto what you said is I'm at a point now to where if I want to catch a flight, I'm going to catch a flight somewhere. So that's the thing too, to where dental school or any professional school that you guys probably know, like you can get consumed. Like you see your friends every day, you study with them, you cry with them, you take exams with them. And so at a certain point, I just realized I do need to have a life outside of here, or else I'm not going to make it to the DDS. And so I just began to be very active and strategic on like planning mini vacations or just making friends outside of school just to kind of help me take my mind off of it, because I do know like it can consume you. And so I think that was another active approach, which I've been very fortunate enough to put my foot down for the past 3 years and going on 4 years now. It's just making sure that I find time for me and find time not thinking about what tooth I'm drilling on tomorrow, or did I pass that practical? Did my professor look at this and laugh? So things in that nature, to where to kind of have that break. So I think those are the biggest things, is just one, making sure I go to people who are licensed, who can help me, and to realize things that maybe I didn't realize about myself. And then secondly is just making sure I had some me time and took a step away from, even though dentistry is something I love, what I'm doing up here is something I love, but taking some time to maybe go to a beach or a cruise or things of that nature. So
I love it. Rashmi.
So yeah, I think a lot of the takeaways are going to be similar. I think my two big focuses on health, I would say, is definitely asking for help is one of them. Whether that's like professional help, but also, when I was in grad school, it was also COVID. So I was about 3-ish months in starting I guess we finished the first semester, and then second semester we went home during spring break, and then we just didn't come back after that. And it was a public health school. I was like learning about COVID in real time in my epi class, and I was like, it was mind blowing. But I was in grad school full time. I was working part time, a couple of jobs part time, because you got to work to live in DC because it's expensive. I was applying to school actually for the first time, and my parents were back in Pittsburgh. My parents both have chronic conditions. So at some point I decided to go back home, make sure they were okay, because at this point we didn't have vaccines. And I remember that fall of 2020, right when COVID was peaking again, we were still not sure on vaccines. My dad got COVID, the first wave, and he has heart disease. My mom has diabetes. So it was really very tense situation at home. And I remember I was just so burnt out. My brother was applying to college, so I was helping him apply to college while applying to med school at the same time. And it was a whole host of things. But I remember it was so hard for me. I had to sit myself down. I was like, I think I need an extension on my thesis. And I remember going back and forth about it in my head. And then I finally sent that email to my thesis advisor and was like, hey, I can't meet this deadline. Like, there's a lot going on. I can't do it. And at the same time, I reached out to my therapist because GW gave us a couple of sessions, and I was like, I need to go. And I'm so glad I did, because it was a very simple yes. My thesis advisor was like, whatever you need, we got your back. My therapist was fantastic. And it was a really scary time for me personally. And then, of course, everyone was in this really scary situation with COVID. So I'm really glad I went. And then I think the second biggest thing is in my last couple of years, I applied to medical school. I didn't get in the first time, and I reapplied, and, by the grace of God, I've now gotten in. But I've had some major health challenges personally as well. I had an ovarian cyst rupture coming out of my grad school time, and then I recently had a PE less than a year ago. Heard some gasps in the audience. Yes, it was very terrifying experience. But in that, I really learned that truly nothing is. It's not that deep. it's nothing is more important than your health, and just being able to give your body the nutrients and the energy and the support that it needs to keep you moving and doing the amazing things that you get to do on a day-to-day basis. It was hard, like recovery from a surgery and then recovery from my PE was really hard because I wanted to do all these things and, continue working with the SMA and continue, figuring out when I'm going to apply next to med school and doing all the stuff that I love doing. But it was also really important for me to take that time to heal, whether that, it was both physically healing, mentally healing, spiritually healing, and just give myself that time. And if I had pushed myself to go into medical school applications all over again, I just don't know that I would have made it out okay. So that was, a really big takeaway for me, is that it was so important to just focus on my health and my well-being, and that it was not selfish to do that. It's just what I needed. And then I would say during that recovery period, leaning on people that I loved for support was so, so important. Leaning on my friends, my family. I loved to dance. So I grew up dancing when I was a kid, Indian classical dancer for 15 plus years. So I found a group here in DC. So that fed my soul, and it helped me, recover physically again. So really prioritizing those things. And then, also the professional stuff is super important. Education is super important, but you're human first.
There you go.
And you can't be that professional rock star if you're not a human first. So checking myself often, I think, was also really helpful for me.
Yeah. What about you, Avery?
So I echo a lot of these, and it's really strong to hear that you all are right there, because I've struggled to learn these lessons, and I love New Year's resolutions, so I'll take every advantage possible to kind of self-triage and fix something. I don't think it's corny. I want to do it all the time. I'll do it for New Year. I'll do it for my birthday. But some of the things that you guys have mentioned have been New Year's resolutions. One of the ones right now is to know how to ask for help and to learn how to say no. And to do it consistently. So I have these phases where I'm really into mental health. Like I'll be doing practicing yoga. Right now I'm doing Orange Theory, and I run a lot with my dog, and I love to cook, and I like to read. I like to do art. All these different things. But there'll be certain windows where that's possible, and then I let my life take over, and I sacrifice those things that I know bring me life and joy and stability and peace, and I put them on the back burner. And so it's been a hard practice to be consistent with these ideas that I've had, or the ideas that I've read, or the things that I see on social media, or the practices that are just safe, that you should kind of keep near and dear. So my vision of wellness, I guess mental health, is being more consistent about those things, because that's a practice that is only going to serve me better as schedules change, as family obligations change, finances, whatever, ebb and flow comes. And to really sum it up, you can't pour from an empty cup. And if I'm supposed to be devoting myself to others, I really have to look in the mirror every morning and make sure I'm doing that with myself first.
That's right. Amen. We say in church at times, if you're but naked, how can you give that person that shirt or that coat? You need help. So what I heard is that a lot of you really took the time to take care of yourself. And as one of the older students, I'm getting my doc. So just working on a dissertation, I was working full time. I really, just like you, had to ask for help and say no. And so with some of you in the room, I know you're from a different generation. Well, when I was in medical school and when I had to do that, well, those days are kind of over. We didn't have to walk 5 miles to school in the snow, barefoot. So I think it's great that these young people, they're taking time to understand and realize that health is wealth, right? You can't take it with you. As my grandma used to say, Miss Shirley Olabelle Carter, she would say, you know what, baby, I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. So, you really have to take care of you. Take care of your health. Take care. So I'm so proud of you all for taking care of you. So when I tell people take care of you, yes, put yourself first. So I'll turn it over to my co-moderator.
Yes, no, thank you so much.
Mhm.
And so, with the big topic of mental health, and especially with us growing up, social media has had a huge impact on our childhood, and so, and even right now. So, with that in mind, with mental health, how can you say that social media has kind of affected your attitudes on health? Okay,
I can take that.
You want to jump for it? Go ahead.
Just because I love social media. You can go in a rabbit hole of things that have no business going into and kind of get lost in it. But there's also a lot of resources you can find. So I found, what's her name? Nedra Nuggets. So she always drops little nuggets, affirmations, and different kind of balancing quotes and life lessons on her page. And she did it so well that I went and bought her book, read it. It was like Set Boundaries, Find Peace. That was a really good one. And on social media also, it makes you know that this is normal, and it kind of relieves the stigma of that ebb and flow I was talking about. So there's another one, like Jake Goodman, and he is a resident, and he is just very adamant about being on antidepressants as a resident, and how hard it is to be in medicine, and say that you too are human, and you too can have depression, and it's okay to have that. It's okay to also need therapy. It's okay to go through these things and have it not affect you professionally, and still be able to be your full self with that history. So I love social media in that sense, and find a lot of things to kind of save those posts and revisit them, and find more resources like the books I found.
Lovely.
Jump in.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I will piggyback off. I think social media definitely has a lot of blessings. I know with my journey being a Black, somebody who is Black overall, trying to get into dentistry, it's not a lot of us. And so when trying to apply, I was seeking other people to help me be better, especially at my admissions test, because I knew that was the only thing that people had a problem with, which is an issue in itself. But at the time, that was my hurdle to jump over. And so at the time, I couldn't find anyone like on YouTube and stuff who I could resonate to. And so I ended up talking to a very close friend, and she ended up getting to dental school the year before me, and she informed me about this great study camp, but I did have to pay money for. I think it was like $1,700. And my biggest thing is that I invest in all these other people and all these other companies. Why not invest in myself? Which, I mean, look at me now. And so overall, I ended up, again, like I expressed before, I did better on my exam. And so I'm blessed to have something like social media and YouTube at the time. I gave my story of me being able to raise my DAT score by 5 points, which is a big thing in because it's only out of 30. And so doing that, I didn't know. I did it because I was like, at least one other person who looks like me can, know how and see how exactly how to conquer this, and that you can conquer. And I centered around mental health and just gave a lot of like tips and tricks. And again, to this day, I think it's like 7,000 views now. But there's been so many positive comments. It's like, I needed this, I needed that. Like, thank you so much. Like, if like this helped me, I needed to come across that. And those are the moments where social media, I feel like, can be beneficial, to where you see those. You could, like you said, you may not be comfortable reaching out to a family member. For me, I'm the only person in my family who's in dentistry, so I walk by faith and not by sight this whole time. But at the same time, to find other people, like you said, look like you, and to seek, like I was saying, to seek help. The only thing about social media is we live in this, unfortunately, social media can cause you to compare yourself to others. And that's something we have to, as a collective, as a people of minorities, just continue to work on ensuring, especially young people, know, like, you are in your own lane. Don't think because someone's driving 80, you have to drive 80 with them. Maybe you need to detour and you all get to the same place at the same time. But that's the only thing to where I've seen, and even in dental school, I've seen, it's just a big thing on that comparison aspect. So I feel like with the blessing and curses of social media, even comparing yourself to someone who got veneers. Not everyone needs veneers, you guys. So please don't let people just shave your teeth for nothing. But at the same time, those are the moments to where like it's great for dentistry because there has been an uptick in people actually wanting to go to the dentist. But at the same time, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
Yeah, I was definitely going to mention the comparison aspect because I do believe there are so many pros to social media, but there's also those cons, especially when it comes to comparison. In the group that I created at GW for Black girls, like I've had like underclassmen come to me when it comes to like creating their 4-year plan and the class they need to take. I saw this girl on TikTok. She took like 20 credits her freshman year so she could like get ahead or something like that. I'm just like, no, you don't have to do that. Like, and especially when people like don't really have people in their family to look up to ask for advice about that. Social media can be detrimental in that aspect, but at the same time, it can be extremely helpful. I know when I was in high school, when I decided that I wanted to go into medicine, that's when I started looking up like people in medicine and social media and Instagram. And my freshman year of college, it was so helpful because all of us were going through the same thing. Like all of us freshmen, class of 2020, didn't get a prom, didn't get a graduation. We were all like kind of mourning our senior year together on social media. And, you know, giving each other advice for classes. And I saw like upperclassmen, Black girls on TikTok, for example, talk about like their experiences, which kind of prompted me and inspired me and my friend to create our group. So I think social media can be very helpful. I've had people DM me, like even freshmen who aren't even at GW yet, like, oh, I'm going to be here next year. I see this. Like, can you give me some advice? Like, I think that is a great, because you didn't get that a while ago. People just went to college and didn't know what to expect. So I think in that aspect, it's very helpful to sort of create that guidance and support for people under you, because I got it and now I'm passing down the torch and doing the same thing that someone did for me that helped me a lot. So I think there's pros and cons, but it also matters how you view it. Because even me, like sometimes I look on TikTok to get inspiration, but then I find myself like, oh, she studied that long today. Okay, maybe I should, you know. So I think it's helpful in that aspect, of course.
All right,
I can jump in, but I want to be mindful of time if we have to.
Go
Okay,
ahead.
I was going to say very similar to Bailey. I agree. I think that it's really helpful in creating community, and I think I really resonate with what you just said of, you know, being someone who's first gen. My parents didn't study in this country. They're not doctors. So it was really, I guess, it was really warming to see that there were other folks out there who had gone through a similar path to what I wanted to go through, and to connect with some really inspiring folks on there. But at the same time, I do feel like I have to set boundaries with, you know, how long I'm scrolling on Instagram, because it could be like, you know, it might be 3 o'clock, and then by the time I finish, it's like, oh, it's 7. Like, when did that happen? So I think it, you know, and it can be, I think, especially in this day and age where we were moving into the AI space, and there's a lot of, you know, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, it's all learning our algorithms. I think it's really important to just have a critical eye, to kind of think about like, what is it that's being fed to you, because it can be very indoctrinating in some ways. So just I sometimes have to like catch myself to be like, you know, is what I'm seeing on here, is that real? I have to fact check it a little bit, and kind of pull myself back. But with that, you know, that just that boundary setting, I think it can be a very healthy community building tool.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the overall theme, especially with, you guys had mentioned comparisons. I think one of my friends, she has in her Instagram bio, like, this is just my highlight reel. And I love that, because it's just showing that, like, I'm really just showing you my best moments. You're not able to see me at my worst. And I think one thing that I really appreciate about a lot of people right now on social media is that they're actually being more open and showing them at their lowest and their flaws, and just reminding people, like, we all go through it and it's okay. And so I think that's one movement I've been starting to see on social media that I've really liked so far. But yeah, fabulous answer. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that was great. So I know we're almost there. Just hang in there with me. Just one more question. And this is just looking at our healthcare, right? The diversity or lack thereof of our healthcare professions. There was a study that was just released that linked our healthcare professions, the diversity, to life expectancy. So for example, they stated, you know, if Black people have Black doctors, their life expectancy actually increases. But ladies and gentlemen, there is something on the horizon. I believe Dr. Gigi and Dr. Menzies spoke about the rollback in civil rights. So I know Stacy and Rashmi, you both work with the Social Mission Alliance. So understanding that our healthcare professions, it is not reflective of our beautiful country. SCOUTUS is actually going to rule on affirmative action. That decision should be coming really soon. How could this ruling impact our fight for health equity?
I can kick us off. There's a lot to say. I'm going to try to keep it short because I know that we're the only thing standing between you guys and getting ready for the gala. So, but I think that, this affirmative action decision really goes beyond just the health workforce.
Mhm.
This is also going to encroach into employment. What do other parts of the country look like? What do other workforces in the country look like? It may also encroach into health professions education curricula,
Right.
because when this decision comes out, it's going to tell us what this nation cares about. And we already have, there's, at least from the medical school aspect, there's schools that are starting to talk about things like medical racism and, teaching Harriet Washington's book, Medical Apartheid, and they're having these conversations about structural determinants of health and how they're influenced by policy and how that is all tied to racism. But that affirmative action decision might be a huge step back to incorporating all of those aspects into our curriculum. We're inching forward in that already, and it's been an uphill battle for sure. But it's going to take us a huge step back in the curricular aspect. But of course, and then it's going to have a big impact on health workforce diversity as well. There's already a lot of barriers for underrepresented minority students and first generation students that are now being, I guess, lots of schools are taking them into account, and they're actually trying to make it a more diverse class incoming. But that is going to be really deeply affected with this decision. There are some schools that have, in California, there's UC Davis has one of the most diverse medical school classes, and they don't do race-based admissions. But that's few and far in between, and that's not out there. It's not out there widely. And we have data from the Mullen Institute for Health Workforce Research that looks at that and looks at the numbers. And it matters, right? And it's not just about the statistic that you just shared, Ashanti, but there's a statistic out there that says underrepresented minority physicians actually are 3 times more likely to go to serve patients from vulnerable backgrounds. So vulnerable backgrounds, Medicaid population, Hispanic communities, Black communities, and immigrant communities.
Right.
And that's not true of their white counterparts. And there's also another statistic that says that students that are exposed to this kind of medicine, like primary care, family medicine, and actually working in vulnerable communities are 2.7 times more likely to go practice in those areas. So again, with this decision, if we're saying as a country we don't care about this, then all that stuff gets rolled back, and we don't have the clinicians that we need to serve the needs of the country. Especially, coming out of COVID, we've seen how important it is to make sure that we have a health workforce that's prepared, and we're already struggling with that. And this affirmative action decision is just going to set us back, way back.
And to piggyback off Rashmi, I'm more just keen to the field of dentistry and the problems that we have in itself. Statistically, there's only 3 out of all the dentists in the United States, only 3% of them are Black. In terms of applicants that are accepted to dental school, it's only like 5% are Black. Majority of that percentage is come from Howard University College of Dentistry and Meharry Medical College. Take those 2 out. They say we need an additional 19,000 more dentists in the United States in order to bridge the gap of where we're at now. So the unfortunate side, and I can speak, going from dental school, working itself down, there is a majority of dental schools who may, out of 100 applicants, may only accept 1 person who's Black. There's like 10 who had their entering class, there was none. And so when we look at those statistics, I know a big push that I was expressing to the Social Mission Alliance that I would love to see in dentistry is for more. There's 70 dental schools, mind you, in the United States and Canada. And so I would love to see them really incorporate the importance of making sure their school in itself represents the nation. But if we take affirmative action back, and it does go back to just what it was before, again, like myself, a lot of students of color, of all colors, struggle statistically when it comes to standardized testing.
Thank you.
Right now in dentistry, maybe one school has again omitted considering the dental admissions test. So if we take that back, and then we have all these applicants, the few applicants that are still applying, I think out of 10,000 applicants, there were only, I wrote the statistic down, but I think it was like 751 who were Black at the time. And so if we start again, for the few applicants that we do having, for the people who actually feel like they can maybe get into dental school, if we begin to not even acknowledge what road they took to get there, again, we will that 3% is going to go down. And that's just evident. And just coming from experience myself, and a lot of those most Black dentists who are currently in dental school, they've gone through some type of pipeline program. If we begin to not even acknowledge those pipeline programs, again, that cuts out the acknowledgement of maybe we've seen statistically students who've gone through this pipeline program do well in dental school, because that's everyone wants to know, like, who can handle dental school from this aspect. If we again begin to not even acknowledge them, we're again, that 19,000 we're not going to get to. In addition to that, if we work ourselves down from there, if we're not continuing to even just educate the saying like, hey, you can be a doctor. Did you know that? You know, like, I know you, Avery, said you participated in a program too, like, so you want to be a doctor. If we again, if schools are not even acknowledging that on a high school level or a middle school level and things in that nature, again, that diversifying the workforce, again, is not going to happen, or it's going to be more difficult, and people won't have such of a, again, what their priorities are, you're going to see very expeditiously. And so I feel that if they strike down affirmative action, I am concerned again with all healthcare fields in a whole, because I know in dentistry we already far and few between, and so and not even being able to have that consideration. I know right now I'll definitely acknowledge Tufts University up in Boston. They have been amazing on the increase of minority dentists who have been accepted into their program. Many of them scores are not high. Those students they've accepted are not high, but they consider and they know statistically what happens when it comes to Black and brown applicants. And so if more schools can again model Tufts, model the Howards, model the Meharries, and I'll even give ode to USC in California, if we begin to model those, change can come. But without affirmative action, those schools who historically for the past 10 years hasn't even accepted maybe 2 Black applicants, they're going to continue on that trend if they're not even being forced through by educational accreditation people in itself, in addition to the government as well.
And can I just add one? I know we were kind of like doom and gloom with our answers here, because it is a really scary thing that's impending in June. But I do want to say, on a more positive note, I think that we, the folks in this room, have a real power to change it, because I know folks in this room are sitting in admissions boards, or they're somewhat affiliated with academic health centers that are making these decisions, or at the very least, you're all providers or somehow connected to this space. And I think that you all know what it takes to be in the shoes that you're in. And I think that you have a very powerful voice that needs to be heard by the folks that are making these decisions. And the folks that are making these decisions have not been through what you've been through. They've not been through what we've been through, but they have the nerve to make the decisions. So I think that it's really meaningful and valuable and important for all of us to organize and advocate and make space for voices like you were just saying, Stacey. It's important to elevate those voices, and also share your stories, and call your elected officials and tell them that they need to codify things like affirmative action, or at least policies that look like them, so we can protect not just the diversity of the health workforce, but also the health of the nation and the health of our communities. So I just wanted to end that on that note, because I'm not sure that we have enough time for another question. So
Go, chime in,
Okay.
and then we're going
And
to close it.
I'll be brief also. I love that note. And speaking from the fireside chat before, talking about good trouble, ending on a lighter note, this is kind of grim news, but that's nothing we're, not used to. And to be frank, I'm I'm inspired by adversity. I think I'm inspired by BDO and NMA and SNMA and any other organization that really looks at adversity, in the eye and is just like, well, we'll find another solution to it. And being in this type of room where you can be inspired next to other people that will work day in and day out to address these disparities and address the systemic, long-standing issues is something that I know that we can make action for. This is a call to action, whether or not this is struck down or maintained, because as you're mentioning with representation and even keeping it, back for black men in white coats at Georgetown, for physicians and black physicians in America in general, in the past 120 years, it's only gone up 4%. And the majority of that is due to women. And while there's still work to be done for black men, it actually has declined since or been stagnant since the 1940s. I know that even at my school at Georgetown, there's 2 black men in the class above me. Both did pipeline programs at Georgetown to get in. And then in my class, there's 4. And we also did programs through Georgetown to get in. And that's not that's not dissimilar from other schools where you have to have pipeline programs to almost demonstrate your efficacy or, augment previous applications where maybe you didn't score as well on standardized tests because you didn't maybe have access to study resources or have just a general like underperformance, or you needed that opportunity because you had such a different plate on in college. Maybe you were working or whatever it may be. But those stats are still alarming and there's still much work to be done. And I just didn't want to leave this without saying I wouldn't be here with the people that looked this sort of issue in the face and communicated it without any sort of apology and really stood in it and said we can change this, because showing up is already a difference, and so I know education is power, but I think our presence is power. And so if we can do anything possible to make sure that these pipeline programs are bolstered, that's that's the
grants.
horizon that we have to stay
They
on.
keep their grants, for sure.
Right. So I really agree with it, and hope that everyone in here is in tune with spreading that word and fighting the good fight.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So you guys, let's give our panelists and co-moderator a round of applause. Thank you so much. Good job. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I have to say first, I was triggered because I got to go back to my college professors. They did not get me prepared. Like I wasn't this. Okay. so, so, so yeah, back in my day, she used the word codify. Okay. Like it was like, all right, let's go. Okay. So, yeah. These are young adults. But thank you all. All jokes aside, I mean, Bailey, I feel you. My daughter graduated in 2020, and I was telling Derek we celebrated her graduation on our couch and watched them do a slideshow on television. And we created a prom in our living room, and I put on a tuxedo and became her prom date. Talking about Black fathers with Dr. Menzies, you have to be there and you have to show up for your daughters, you have to show up for your kids. And so I made her favorite meal and we did it there in the living room. And so you have to be there. So what you're talking about, Avery, is being present. And so being present at all times in all spaces, we have to be there. If we're not present, we don't have the change that we're looking for. So I would say continue to be present. I will say no is a complete sentence. All right, remember that. You don't have to explain why you're saying no. You don't owe them an explanation. You cannot pour from an empty cup. All right, so take care of yourself. Finally, I want to say as we're wrapping up today, I want to thank everybody, those of us particularly that stayed the whole day. Thank you so much. This has been fantastic. Coming back. Coming back after 3 years off, it's been a daunting task for all of us. And this has been wonderful to participate in this. I want to thank our CEO, Reggie Ware. So let's give him a round of applause for He could have said no. He could have said, but he said, no, we need to bring back Tall Blacks in Health. And we made it happen. I want to thank Sanjay and her team for helping us put this together. Encore, AV, my boys in the back, thank you so much. Getting it on. Dr. Renee is my producer, my remote producer. I want to give her a shout out. I know she's got that going on. And particularly, I want to thank our sponsors, Novartis, Merck, Genentech, Boston Scientific, Gilead, Roche, Amgen, Sanofi, Cedars-Sinai. This could not have happened without your contribution. So I want to thank you all for contributing to this program and to the youth that are going to be leading us in the future. I will end on this note. Reggie says a lot. If you're on our calls on every day at 10 a.m. Eastern, he says a lot. And I listen because he has been in this, he's been fighting this fight for over 18 years. And that deserves a lot of respect. It being on the front line for Black Americans in health. And so I thank him for that. And one of the things he said recently, and he talked about a quote that he has hanging on his wall. And it's a Maya Angelou quote. And she said, I learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but will never forget how you made them feel. And so we're leaving here today. I want you to remember how you felt from each one of these panels. Remember how you felt today, and remember how you feel going forward in your fight for health care and health equity. Thank you so much, and we'll see y'all at the gala. Yeah,